The morning mist clung to the rolling hills of Fort Braxton like a shroud, masking the most grueling tactical training facility in the western United States. What happened here would challenge everything the military establishment believed about capability, determination, and the dangerous cost of underestimating the quiet ones. This is the story of Maya Chen, a woman whose unassuming appearance concealed skills that would rewrite the record books and humble some of the most elite warriors in the country. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya Chen's beat-up Honda Civic wheezed to a stop in the gravel parking lot outside Fort Braxton's main gate. Its engine making sounds that suggested retirement was long overdue. She sat for a moment, hands gripping the worn steering wheel, watching through her cracked windshield as camouflaged figures moved with purpose between the sprawling complex of buildings ahead. At 28, Maya looked more like a librarian than someone who belonged at the nation's premier tactical training facility. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, wire-rimmed glasses perched on her nose, and her civilian clothes consisted of worn jeans, hiking boots, and a plain gray sweater that had seen better days. The invitation letter crumpled in. Her passenger seat still seemed surreal. 6 weeks ago, she had been working the night shift at a 24-hour diner in Portland, Oregon, serving coffee to truck drivers and insomniacs while trying to save enough money to finish her degree in physical therapy. The letter had arrived on a Tuesday, stamped with official seals and bearing the signature of Colonel Marcus Webb, director of the Elite Tactical Assessment Program. Maya had read it 3 times before the words sank in. Somehow her name had been selected from a national database for participation in the most exclusive military training evaluation in the country. She grabbed her single duffel bag from the back seat, the same olive green surplus store find that had served her through 2 years of community college and countless camping trips in the Oregon wilderness. Inside were 3 changes of clothes, basic toiletries, and a dog-eared paperback copy of Sun Tzu's The Art of War that her grandfather had given her before his death. The book was her talisman, filled with his handwritten notes in the margins, wisdom passed down from a man who had survived 3 tours in Vietnam and taught her that true strength often came disguised as weakness. The guard shack at Fort Braxton's entrance was manned by a young sergeant whose uniform looked like it had been pressed with military precision. He barely glanced at Maya's identification before pointing toward a cluster of temporary buildings. In the distance, "Civilian participants report to Building C," he said with barely concealed boredom. "Follow the red line painted on the asphalt. Orientation starts at 0800. Maya nodded and began walking, her footsteps echoing against the concrete as she followed the painted line through the base. Around her, the morning routine of military life unfolded with choreographed efficiency. Soldiers jogged in formation, their cadence calls carrying across the compound. Officers strode between buildings with purposeful urgency, their conversations filled with acronyms and terminology that might as well have been foreign language. She felt the stares as she walked, a civilian intruder in a world built on hierarchy and belonging. Building C turned out to be a converted barracks, its interior divided into a reception area, briefing room, and dormitory-style sleeping quarters. Maya approached the reception desk where a staff sergeant with a weathered face and kind eyes was processing paperwork. His name tag read Rodriguez, and unlike the guard at the gate, he offered a genuine smile. "You must be Chen," Rodriguez said, consulting his roster. "Welcome to Fort Braxton. I have to say, you're not quite what I expected when I saw your name on the participant list." Maya raised an eyebrow. "What were you expecting, Sergeant?" Rodriguez chuckled and handed her a manila folder thick with documents. "Honestly? Someone bigger. The Elite Tactical Assessment Program usually attracts former Special Forces, professional athletes, law enforcement officers, people with obvious physical qualifications. Your background is, he paused, flipping through her file. Interesting. College dropout, food service industry, no formal combat training. Mind if I ask how you ended up here? I honestly have no idea, Maya replied, accepting the folder. I received an invitation letter 6 weeks ago. I thought it might be some kind of mistake, but when I called the number provided, they confirmed my selection. Said my name came up through some kind of national screening process, but they wouldn't give me details. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. The selection process is classified, but I can tell you it's not random. Somebody somewhere thinks you have what it takes to compete with the best tactical operators in the country. The question is whether you think so too. Maya glanced around the reception area, taking in the walls covered with photographs of previous program graduates. The faces staring back at her belonged to men and women who looked like they could bench press small cars. Chiseled jawlines, steely eyes, and the kind of physical presence that commanded respect. She looked nothing like them, and she suspected that fact would not go unnoticed by her fellow participants. Guess we'll find out, she said quietly. The dormitory was a long room lined with metal bunk beds, each assigned to a participant in the 3-week assessment program. Maya found her bunk near the middle of the room, marked with a small placard bearing her name. She was in the process of stowing her gear when the first of her fellow participants began arriving. They came in like a parade of human weapons. Jake Morrison, a former Navy SEAL whose arms looked like tree trunks and whose handshake could probably crush walnuts. Sarah Martinez, an Army Ranger whose compact frame radiated coiled energy and whose eyes never stopped scanning for threats. Tommy Richardson, a police SWAT team leader from Chicago, whose reputation for tactical excellence had earned him commendations from 3 different departments. One by one, they filed into the dormitory, each one more physically impressive than the last. Maya continued unpacking in silence, acutely aware of the conversations happening around her. The other participants were trading war stories, comparing credentials, and sizing each other up with the competitive intensity of professional athletes. She caught fragments of their discussions, tales of deployments in hostile territories, successful raids on dangerous criminals, and training regimens that sounded more like torture sessions. Hey, you lost? The voice belonged to Jake Morrison, who had approached her bunk with the swagger of someone accustomed to being the most intimidating person in any room. He was looking at Maya with the kind of confused expression usually reserved for finding a house cat at a dogfight. I don't think so, Maya replied evenly, not looking up from her unpacking. This is my assigned bunk. Morrison laughed, a sound devoid of humor. No, I mean, are you lost as in this is the elite tactical assessment program, not summer camp? You sure you're in the right place? The conversation in the dormitory died as other participants turned to watch the exchange. Maya could feel their eyes on her, measuring, judging, finding her wanting. She had expected this moment from the instant she decided to accept the invitation. In every challenging environment she had ever entered, there was always someone who felt the need to establish dominance through intimidation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I received the same invitation letter you did, Maya said, finally meeting Morrison's gaze. If there's been a mistake, I'm sure the staff will figure it out during orientation. Sarah Martinez joined the conversation, her voice carrying the clipped precision of someone accustomed to command. What's your background? Military? Law enforcement? Private security? Food service, Maya replied simply. The dormitory erupted in laughter. Not the good-natured chuckling of people sharing a joke, but the harsh, mocking laughter of predators who had identified easy prey. Tommy Richardson slapped his knee and shook his head in disbelief. Food service, he repeated. Lady, I don't Know who you know or what strings you pulled to get here, but this isn't a game. People get hurt during these assessments, seriously hurt. Maybe you should reconsider before you end up in a hospital. Maya zipped up her duffel bag and placed it in the metal locker beside her bunk. The laughter was still rippling through the room, but she noticed that not everyone was participating. A few of the participants watched the exchange with neutral expressions, neither joining the mockery nor defending her. Professional operators, she realized, who were reserving judgment until they had more information. "I appreciate your concern," Maya said to Richardson, "but I think I'll stick around and see what happens." Morrison stepped closer, using his considerable height advantage to loom over her. "Look, sweetheart, I don't know what fantasy you're living, but this program has a 90% washout rate. Most of the people who flame out are experienced military and law enforcement personnel. What makes you think a waitress is going to succeed where special forces operators fail?" The dormitory fell silent, waiting for her response. Maya could feel the weight of their expectations, their certainty that she would crumble under the pressure of their combined skepticism. She thought about her grandfather's voice, the lessons he had taught her during their long hikes through the Oregon mountains. "Maya," he had said, "the loudest voice in the room is rarely the most dangerous one. Watch for the quiet ones. They're the ones who have nothing to prove." "I guess we'll find out," Maya said quietly, turning back to her bunk. The laughter resumed, but it had a forced quality now, as if the participants were trying too hard to convince themselves of something. Maya ignored it and pulled out her copy of The Art of War, settling onto her bunk to read while she waited for orientation to begin. The book fell open to a page her grandfather had marked with particular enthusiasm, a passage about knowing yourself and knowing your enemy. As the morning progressed, more participants arrived, each one adding to the testosterone-fueled atmosphere of competitive machismo. Maya learned their names and backgrounds through overheard conversations. Derek Thompson, a former Marine Force reconnaissance specialist whose chest looked like a roadmap of combat decorations. Lisa Park, a federal agent whose reputation for tactical excellence had earned her assignments with counterterrorism units. Michael Torres, a private military contractor whose work in conflict zones had made him a legend in certain circles. Each new arrival followed the same pattern. They would survey the room, catalog the competition, and eventually notice Maya sitting quietly on her bunk. The reactions ranged from confusion to amusement to outright hostility, but the underlying message was always the same: she didn't belong here. At precisely 0800 hours, a sharp whistle echoed through the dormitory. The participants snapped to attention as Colonel Marcus Webb entered the room, flanked by a team of instructors whose bearings screamed elite military training. Webb was in his 50s, with gray hair cut in a perfect high and tight and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail in the room with computer-like efficiency. "Ladies and gentlemen," Webb announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades commanding respect, "welcome to the Elite Tactical Assessment Program. Over the next 3 weeks, you will be pushed beyond your limits in every conceivable way. Physical endurance, mental resilience, tactical thinking, leadership under pressure, and adaptation to unexpected challenges. Most of you will fail. That is not a prediction. It is a statistical certainty based on 15 years of program data." He began pacing in front of the assembled participants, his gaze moving from face to face like a scanner analyzing data. This program was designed to identify individuals with the potential for the highest levels of tactical excellence. "We are not interested in your previous accomplishments, your service records, or your professional reputations. Here, you start from zero. Here, you prove yourself through performance, not pedigree." Webb's eyes settled on Maya for a moment longer than the others, and she thought she detected a hint of curiosity in his expression. "Some of you are wondering why certain individuals were selected for this program. The selection process incorporates Factors that go beyond obvious qualifications. Psychological resilience, adaptability, unconventional problem-solving abilities, and potential for growth under extreme stress. Every person in this room earned their place here, regardless of how unlikely that might seem to you or to them. The pointed nature of the comment was not lost on anyone in the room. Maya felt the eyes of her fellow participants shift toward her again, but this time with a different quality. Webb's words had established that her presence was intentional, not accidental, which meant someone in authority believed she belonged. Here, your first evaluation begins in 30 minutes, Webb continued. You will be divided into teams for an initial tactical scenario. Performance will be monitored and recorded for analysis. Equipment issue begins now. Dismissed. The participants filed out of the dormitory toward the equipment building, their earlier jocularity replaced by focused professionalism. Maya found herself walking beside a quiet man named David Kim, one of the few who hadn't participated in the morning's mockery. He was Asian American, probably in his early 30s, with the lean build of a distance runner and thoughtful eyes that suggested intelligence over intimidation. Former military? Maya asked as they walked. Kim shook. His head, emergency medical technician. Worked search and rescue in the mountains of Colorado for 8 years. You? Food service in Portland. Though I spend most of my free time hiking and camping in the wilderness. Kim nodded approvingly. Wilderness experience is underrated. Most people think tactical skills are all about weapons and combat, but half the battle is just surviving in challenging environments. Navigation, weather reading, resource management, mental resilience when things go wrong. It was the first genuinely encouraging conversation Maya had experienced since arriving at Fort Braxton. Kim's perspective reminded her that tactical excellence encompassed more than physical prowess and combat training. Her years of solo hiking, her familiarity with outdoor challenges, and her experience working under pressure in the chaotic environment of a busy restaurant might be more relevant than they initially appeared. The equipment building turned out to be a warehouse-sized facility lined with racks of military gear. Each participant was issued a tactical vest, helmet, communication headset, and a variety of training weapons including rubber knives, paint-loaded firearms, and non-lethal electronic devices. Maya struggled with the weight of the equipment at first, but the straps and buckles felt familiar from her hiking gear, and she quickly adapted to the distribution of weight across her body. "First time wearing tactical equipment?" asked one of the instructors, a grizzled sergeant whose name tag read Williams. "Yes, Sergeant, but I'm used to carrying heavy packs during long hikes." Williams nodded and adjusted the fit of her vest. "Hiking experience is good. Shows you understand weight distribution and sustained physical effort. Most people think military operations are all about short bursts of intense action, but the reality is hours of movement while carrying heavy loads. Your hiking background might serve you better than you think." Maya appreciated the encouragement, but she could see the skeptical looks from other participants, who were donning their equipment with the practiced efficiency of people who had worn similar gear in real combat situations. Morrison was checking his weapons with the fluid motions of muscle memory, while Martinez was adjusting her equipment with the precision of someone who understood that poor gear management could mean the difference between life and death. Tactical scenario briefing took place in a classroom adjacent to the equipment building. Colonel Webb stood before a large topographical map showing a mock village constructed somewhere on the base grounds. The scenario was straightforward in concept, but complex in execution. Teams of 4 participants would infiltrate the village, locate and extract a simulated hostage, and evacuate to a designated extraction point while avoiding or neutralizing simulated enemy forces. Teams have been assigned based on initial psychological profiles, Webb announced. The goal is to create balanced groups that test leadership dynamics and collaborative problem-solving under stress. Team assignments are non-negotiable, Maya found herself assigned to Team 3, along with Morrison Martinez and a former Army intelligence specialist named Robert. Chen, who had the lean build of a marathon runner and the intense focus of someone accustomed to processing complex information under pressure. It was, she realized, a deliberately challenging assignment. Webb had placed her with 3 highly qualified individuals who had already established their skepticism about her capabilities. The team was given 30 minutes to plan their approach before deployment to the training village. Morrison immediately assumed leadership, spreading the topographical map across a table and beginning to outline strategy with the confidence of someone who had led real operations in hostile territory. Okay, people, this is straightforward. Infiltration and extraction, Morrison announced, pointing to various locations on the map. Martinez, you take point on reconnaissance. Your ranger training gives you the best field observation skills. Chen, you handle communications and intelligence analysis. Keep us informed about enemy movements and tactical updates. Maya, he paused, clearly struggling with how to assign her a role. You stay in the rear and provide backup support. Maya studied the map while Morrison outlined his plan. The approach was competent but conventional, following standard military doctrine for small unit operations. The route he had selected offered good concealment, but would require significant time to traverse, and the extraction point was located in an area that could easily become a bottleneck if enemy forces converged on their position. What about using the drainage culvert along the eastern approach? Maya suggested, pointing to a feature on the map that Morrison had overlooked. It would cut our infiltration time in half and provide concealment almost to the target building. Morrison glanced at the map and shook his head dismissively. Drainage systems are potential death traps. If we get pinned down in there, we have no escape routes. We stick with the plan. Martinez looked more closely at Maya's suggested route, her tactical mind analyzing the possibilities. Actually, the culvert approach has merit. If we send one person through the drainage system while the rest of the team provides overwatch, we could create a distraction that draws enemy attention away from the primary infiltration route. We're not redesigning the entire operation. Based on suggestions from someone with no tactical experience, Morrison said firmly. Maya, I understand you want to contribute, but complex operations require trust and proven methods, not experimental approaches. Maya felt the familiar sting of dismissal, but she also noticed that Chen was studying the map with renewed interest. His intelligence background had apparently taught him to consider multiple approaches to any problem, and he was tracing potential routes with his finger while running calculations in his head. The drainage approach could work as a secondary option, Chen said carefully. If the primary infiltration encounters unexpected resistance, having an alternate route already scouted could provide tactical flexibility. Morrison's jaw tightened with the frustration of someone who was accustomed to having his decisions accepted without question. Fine, Maya can scout the drainage route as a backup option. But the primary plan remains unchanged, and we move as a cohesive unit. No individual heroics, no improvisation. Clear? The team spent the remaining planning time reviewing equipment, establishing communication protocols, and walking through the sequence of actions once they reached the target area. Maya participated in the discussions, but found herself increasingly relegated to a support role, despite her suggestions about alternative approaches and potential contingencies. As they prepared to deploy to the training village, Maya caught Colonel Webb observing their team interaction from across the room. His expression was unreadable, but she suspected that the team dynamics were being evaluated as closely as their tactical performance. The Elite Tactical Assessment Program was clearly designed to test more than individual capabilities. It was assessing how people functioned under pressure, adapted to challenging circumstances, and worked together when the stakes were high. The training village was a remarkable facility, a full-scale replica of a Middle Eastern settlement complete with multi-story buildings, narrow alleyways, and realistic environmental details. Maya could see why Fort Braxton had earned its reputation as the premier tactical training facility. The level of detail in the constructed environment rivaled anything she had seen in movies or television shows. Team 3 took their positions at the designated insertion point, a wooded area approximately 500 meters from the village perimeter. Through her binoculars, Maya could see the opposition force personnel moving through the village, their movements coordinated and professional. These weren't military personnel playing enemy roles. They were experienced contractors who specialized in providing realistic opposition for training scenarios. Morrison's plan unfolded exactly as briefed, with Martinez conducting reconnaissance, while the team moved through the forest toward their primary infiltration point. The approach was methodical and professional, but Maya could see problems developing before they became critical. The opposition forces were more alert than anticipated, with roving patrols that would intersect their planned route at several points. The drainage culvert she had identified during planning offered concealment that their current approach lacked. "Contact front," Martinez whispered over the communication system. 2 opposition personnel, 50 meters ahead, moving toward our position. Morrison called for the team to take cover behind a fallen log while they waited for the patrol to pass. Maya used the pause to study the terrain more carefully, comparing their current position with the topographical map. The drainage entrance was visible through the trees, approximately 30 meters to their east, offering an alternative approach that would bypass the patrol entirely. "We could still use the drainage route," Maya suggested quietly. "Those patrols aren't covering the eastern approach, and we'd avoid contact entirely." "Negative," Morrison replied without hesitation. "We stick with the plan. The patrol will pass, and we'll continue with the primary route." But the patrol didn't pass. Instead, the opposition personnel settled into an overwatch position that covered the exact route Morrison had planned to use for the final approach to the village. Maya watched through her binoculars as more opposition forces moved into position, establishing a defensive perimeter that would make their planned infiltration extremely difficult. "They're setting up interlocking fields of fire," Chen observed. "Standard counter-infiltration tactics. They've identified the most likely approach routes and positioned personnel to cover them." Maya felt a surge of vindication mixed with frustration. The opposition forces were demonstrating exactly the kind of tactical thinking that made alternative approaches valuable. But Morrison was too committed to his original plan to adapt to changing circumstances. "Time to go to Plan B," Martinez suggested, checking her watch. "We're burning time sitting here, and our mission timeline isn't flexible." Morrison's reluctance to change course was visible in his body language, but the tactical situation was becoming increasingly untenable. After several more minutes of watching the opposition forces strengthen their positions, he finally made the decision to adopt Maya's suggested alternative approach. "Okay, we'll try the drainage route," he said with obvious reluctance. "But we move as a team, no individual initiatives. Maya, since this was your idea, you take point through the culvert. But you follow my orders precisely, understood?" Maya nodded, feeling a mixture of anticipation and pressure. She had advocated for this approach, and now she would be responsible for proving its effectiveness. As the team moved toward the drainage entrance, she could feel the weight of their skepticism and the knowledge that failure would confirm their preconceptions about her capabilities. The drainage culvert was larger than it had appeared on the map, with enough clearance for a person to move through in a low crouch. Maya entered first, using her small size and hiking experience to navigate the confined space with minimal noise. Behind her, she could hear Morrison, Martinez, and Chen following, their larger frames making the passage more challenging. The culvert ran for approximately 200 meters, emerging near the village perimeter in a location that provided excellent concealment while offering multiple options for the final approach to the target building. Maya reached the exit point and carefully surveyed the tactical situation, using hand signals to communicate what she observed to the rest of the team. The alternative approach had worked perfectly. They were now positioned within 50 meters of the target building, with clear sight lines and multiple escape routes available. The opposition forces were still focused on the primary approach routes, leaving their current position unobserved and undefended. Outstanding reconnaissance, Chen whispered as the team regrouped near the culvert exit. This position is tactically superior to anything we could have achieved with the original plan. Maya felt a surge of satisfaction at the acknowledgement, but she also noticed that Morrison was struggling with the implications of her successful suggestion. His leadership had been based on experience and conventional tactics, but her alternative approach had proven more effective than his carefully planned operation. The hostage extraction proceeded smoothly from their superior position. Martinez was able to approach the target building unobserved, while Chen provided overwatch and Morrison coordinated the team's movements. Maya found herself assigned to rear security, watching for opposition forces that might threaten their escape route. But as they prepared to extract the simulated hostage, the opposition forces finally detected their presence. Alarm signals echoed through the village, and Maya could see enemy personnel moving to surround the target building. The team's superior initial position had given them an advantage, but they were about to face the most challenging part of the operation, fighting their way out while protecting a non-combatant. "Contact rear," Maya called over the communication system as she spotted opposition personnel moving toward their planned escape route. "Multiple contacts converging on our extraction path." Morrison's voice was tight with stress as he responded. "How many?" Maya used her binoculars to count the approaching opposition forces, her hiking experience helping her identify movement through the terrain that others might miss. 6 confirmed, possibly more. They're moving to cut off our primary escape route. The team found themselves facing exactly the kind of tactical challenge that separated competent operators from elite ones. Their mission was only half complete, and they were about to discover whether their planning, training, and ability to adapt under pressure would be sufficient to achieve success, or whether they would join the 90% of participants who failed to meet the program's standards. Maya crouched behind a concrete barrier, watching opposition forces maneuver through the village streets while her teammates completed the hostage extraction. This was the moment when theoretical tactical knowledge met practical reality, when careful planning encountered the chaos of dynamic situations. She was about to discover whether her unconventional background would prove to be a liability or an unexpected advantage in the crucible of elite tactical assessment. The sound of approaching footsteps indicated that the opposition forces had identified their position and were moving to engage. Maya gripped her training weapon and prepared for the most challenging test of her life, knowing that the next few minutes would determine not only her team's success, but also whether she belonged among the nation's elite tactical operators. The battle was about to begin, and everything she had learned during her quiet years of preparation was about to be put to the ultimate test. The first shots came from Maya's left flank, paint rounds splattering against the concrete barrier where she had taken cover. The opposition forces were using standard suppression tactics, laying down covering fire while other elements maneuvered to flank their position. Maya pressed herself against the barrier and keyed her radio microphone, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "Contact left. 3 hostiles advancing through the alley between buildings 4 and 5. They're trying to get behind us." Morrison's voice crackled through her earpiece, strain evident in his tone, as he coordinated the extraction from inside the target building. "Copy that. Martinez, what's your status on the hostage?" "Secured and ready for movement," Martinez replied. "But we've got problems up here too. Sniper positions on the rooftops, at least 2 confirmed." Maya shifted her position to get a better view of the tactical situation unfolding around them. Through her scope, she could see opposition personnel moving with disciplined precision, using the urban environment to their advantage while closing the net around Team 3. These weren't amateur role players. They were experienced operators who understood small unit tactics and had obviously been briefed on the most effective ways to challenge infiltrating teams. The sound of breaking glass indicated that the opposition had gained entry to adjacent buildings, attempting to establish elevated firing positions that would command the streets around the target structure. Maya realized that their team was facing a classic urban warfare scenario, outnumbered, surrounded, and fighting an enemy that knew the terrain better than they did. "We need to move now," Chen's voice came through the communication system. "They're establishing a perimeter. Every second we delay gives them time to strengthen their positions." Maya studied the terrain around their position, looking for routes that might offer concealment during their withdrawal. Her hiking experience had taught her to think in 3 dimensions, considering not just horizontal movement, but elevation changes, natural cover, and obstacles that could be used to advantage. The drainage system that had served them so well during infiltration extended throughout the village, connecting to a network of utility tunnels that could provide covered movement. "There's a storm drain access point 20 meters southeast of our position," Maya called over the radio. "It connects to the same system we used for infiltration. We could use it to bypass their perimeter." Morrison's response was immediate and sharp. "Negative. We don't split the team during extraction. We move together on the surface using standard bounding overwatch." But even as Morrison spoke, Maya could see opposition forces moving to cut off their planned surface route. The enemy had anticipated conventional extraction tactics and positioned personnel to counter them. The drainage system remained unobserved, offering a path that could take them beyond the opposition perimeter before they emerged above ground. "Jake, look at the tactical situation," Martinez interjected. "They've got us boxed in using standard counter-infiltration doctrine. We need an unconventional solution." Maya watched Morrison struggle with the decision, his training and experience pulling him toward proven tactics, while the evolving situation demanded adaptation. The opposition forces were demonstrating exactly why unconventional approaches could be tactically superior. They had prepared for standard military responses, but hadn't anticipated creative alternatives. "Maya, how confident are you about the drainage route?" Morrison finally asked, his voice tight with reluctance. Maya had been studying the storm drain system during their approach, noting connection points and calculating distances based on the village layout. Her experience navigating unmarked wilderness trails had taught her to develop mental maps of complex terrain, skills that transferred surprisingly well to urban environments. Very confident. "The system connects to an exit point beyond their current perimeter. We'd emerge approximately 300 meters from here, well outside their established positions." A burst of automatic weapons fire echoed through the village as opposition forces engaged targets in adjacent sectors. Other teams were facing similar challenges, and Maya could hear radio chatter indicating that the tactical scenario was becoming increasingly complex. The pressure to make a decision was mounting with each passing minute. "Okay, we try the underground route," Morrison decided. "But we move as a unit, no one gets separated. Maya, you lead since you know the system. Martinez, you handle the hostage. Chen and I will provide rear security." Maya felt a surge of responsibility mixed with determination as she prepared to guide her team through the subterranean maze. This was her moment to prove that unconventional thinking could achieve results that traditional methods could not. She checked her equipment one final time and prepared to enter the storm drain access point. The underground passage was more challenging than the initial infiltration culvert, requiring the team to navigate through water that was knee-deep in some sections and low-hanging obstacles that threatened to snag equipment or slow their movement. Maya led the way, using her small stature and wilderness navigation skills to find the most efficient path through the interconnected tunnels. Behind her, she could hear the controlled breathing of her teammates as they adapted to the confined, disorienting environment. Morrison was managing the stress better than she had expected, following her guidance without question, despite his obvious discomfort with relinquishing tactical control. Martinez was handling the simulated hostage with professional competence, ensuring their charge remained calm and cooperative during the underground movement. Chen brought up the rear, periodically checking their back trail for signs of pursuit, while maintaining radio communication with the surface elements. His intelligence background had apparently included training in unconventional movement, because he was adapting to the underground environment with impressive skill. The tunnels extended much farther than Maya had initially calculated, connecting not just to other parts of the village but to natural cave systems that had been incorporated into the drainage infrastructure. She realized that the Fort Braxton facility was even more sophisticated than it appeared, offering training scenarios that incorporated both man-made and natural terrain features. After 20 minutes of underground movement, Maya identified the exit point she had been seeking. The storm drain emerged from a hillside approximately 400 meters beyond the village perimeter, well outside the area where opposition forces had established their containment positions. She carefully surveyed the surface before signaling the all clear to her team. "Outstanding navigation," Chen whispered as they emerged into daylight. "That route took us completely outside their operational area." Maya felt a surge of satisfaction at the successful extraction, but she also noticed that Morrison was studying her with a different expression than she had seen before. The skepticism was still there, but it was mixed with something that might have been professional respect. "Good work on the route selection," Morrison acknowledged quietly. "Your unconventional approach achieved results that standard tactics couldn't have matched." The team made their way to the designated extraction point without further contact with opposition forces. Their underground movement had bypassed the entire enemy containment effort, allowing them to complete their mission objective while other teams were still fighting their way through hostile territory. Colonel Webb was waiting at the extraction point along with several evaluation officers who were recording every aspect of the team's performance. Maya could see other participants arriving from different directions, some showing signs of intense combat while others appeared to have encountered significant difficulties during their operations. "Team 3, report," Webb commanded as they approached the debriefing area. Morrison stepped forward to deliver the tactical summary, but Webb raised a hand to stop him. "I want to hear from the team member who guided your underground movement. Chen, brief me on your extraction route." Maya felt every eye focus on her as she moved to the front of the group. The other teams had gathered around the debriefing area, and she could see familiar faces from the dormitory, watching with expressions ranging from surprise to skepticism. "Sir, we utilized the storm drainage system to bypass opposition containment efforts. The underground route extended from the village center to a hillside exit point, approximately 400 meters beyond the enemy perimeter. Total underground. Movement time was 22 minutes, with no contact after initial infiltration." Webb nodded slowly, making notes on his evaluation tablet. "And whose decision was it to use the drainage system for extraction?" Maya hesitated, unsure whether claiming credit would be seen as appropriate or arrogant. Morrison solved her dilemma by speaking up without prompting. "Maya identified both the infiltration and extraction routes, sir. Her tactical suggestions proved superior to conventional approaches." Webb's expression remained neutral, but Maya thought she detected a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. "Interesting. Team 3 achieved complete mission success with 0 casualties while utilizing unconventional tactics. Other teams faced significantly more challenges using standard approaches." As the debriefing continued, Maya learned that Team 3 had been the only group to achieve full mission success without taking simulated casualties. Several other teams had failed to extract their hostages, while one team had suffered total elimination during the initial infiltration phase. Jake Morrison, the former Navy SEAL who had dismissed her as a misplaced civilian just hours earlier, approached her during the break between evaluations. His expression was thoughtful, lacking the casual arrogance she had observed that morning. "Maya, I owe you an apology," Morrison said quietly. "I made assumptions based on your background that weren't fair or accurate. Your tactical thinking today was outstanding, and I should have listened to your suggestions more carefully from the beginning." Maya appreciated the acknowledgement, but she could also see the discomfort in Morrison's posture. Admitting error didn't come easily to someone who had built his reputation on tactical excellence and leadership capability. "Jake, we all bring different strengths to a team. Your experience and leadership kept us organized and focused. My contribution was just one piece of a successful operation." Morrison nodded, but Maya could see that her gracious response had only deepened his respect for her character. She was learning that tactical competence without arrogance was a rare and valuable combination in high-pressure environments. The afternoon brought individual skills assessments designed to evaluate each participant's capabilities across a range of disciplines. Maya found herself rotating through stations that tested everything from marksmanship and physical fitness to problem-solving under stress and leadership in simulated crisis situations. The marksmanship evaluation took place on a range that incorporated multiple shooting positions, varying distances, and time pressure designed to simulate combat conditions. Maya had never fired a weapon before arriving at Fort Braxton, but her archery experience from wilderness camping provided a foundation of steady hands and controlled breathing that translated surprisingly well to firearms. "First time shooting?" asked Sergeant Williams, the range instructor who had helped her with equipment fitting that morning. "Yes, Sergeant. I've done some archery, but nothing like this." Williams positioned himself beside her firing station and began explaining the fundamentals of marksmanship, from proper stance and grip to sight alignment and trigger control. Maya absorbed the instruction quickly, her scientific mind breaking down the mechanics of accurate shooting into component skills that could be practiced and improved. Her first few shots were erratic, missing the target entirely as she struggled with the unfamiliar weight and recoil of the training weapon. But Williams was a patient instructor, making small adjustments to her form and encouraging her to focus on consistent technique rather than immediate results. "Shooting is like any other skill," Williams explained as Maya prepared for another string of fire. "It's about developing muscle memory and mental discipline. Your archery background actually gives you advantages that most beginners don't have." By the end of the session, Maya was consistently hitting the target and had even managed a few shots in the scoring rings. Her performance wasn't exceptional by military standards, but it demonstrated the kind of rapid learning and adaptation that the assessment program was designed to identify. The physical fitness evaluation was more challenging, testing cardiovascular endurance, strength, and agility through a series of timed events. Maya's hiking experience served her well during the distance running portions, but she struggled with upper body strength exercises that favored participants with military or athletic backgrounds. Tommy Richardson, the SWAT team leader who had questioned her presence that morning, was working through the same fitness stations. Maya noticed that he was watching her performance with interest rather than the mockery she had expected. "You're doing better than I thought you would," Richardson commented as they moved between exercise stations. "Most people without military fitness backgrounds wash out during the physical evaluations." Maya wiped sweat from her forehead and prepared for the next exercise, a rope climbing event that would test both strength and technique. "I spend a lot of time hiking in the mountains. It's different from military fitness, but it builds endurance and mental toughness." Richardson nodded thoughtfully. "Endurance is more important than people think. Most tactical operations involve hours of physical stress, not just short bursts of intense activity. Your hiking background might actually be better preparation than traditional gym training. The rope climbing proved to be one of Maya's stronger events. Her small size and rock climbing experience allowed her to ascend efficiently while larger. Participants struggled with the technique required for smooth movement. She reached the top in respectable time, earning an approving nod from the evaluating instructor. As the individual assessments continued, Maya began to notice a shift in how other participants interacted with her. The morning's dismissive mockery had been replaced by cautious interest and, in some cases, genuine respect. Her successful performance during the team tactical exercise had established credibility that was being reinforced by competent showing during individual evaluations. Lisa Park, the federal agent whose tactical reputation had earned her counter-terrorism assignments, approached Maya during a break between assessment stations. Park had been one of the few participants who hadn't participated in the mornings. Mockery, maintaining professional neutrality while observing Maya's interactions with others. "Maya, I wanted to ask you something," Park said quietly. "How did you identify those drainage routes so quickly during the tactical exercise? That kind of terrain analysis usually requires extensive experience with urban operations." Maya considered the question carefully, trying to articulate skills that she had developed intuitively rather than through formal training. "I think it comes from wilderness navigation. When you're hiking in unmarked terrain, you learn to think about how water moves, where natural paths exist, and how to use elevation changes to your advantage. Urban environments have similar patterns, just with artificial structures instead of natural features." Park nodded with understanding. "That's actually brilliant. Most tactical training focuses on working within urban environments, but thinking about cities as modified natural terrain opens up possibilities that conventional approaches might miss." The conversation was interrupted by Colonel Webb's voice. Over the facility's public address system, "All participants report to Briefing Room Alpha for afternoon evaluation summary and evening assignment briefing." As the group gathered in the briefing room, Maya could feel the changed dynamic among the participants. The morning's clear hierarchy based on military credentials and physical presence had been complicated by her unexpected competence during the tactical exercise. She was no longer invisible or dismissible, but she also wasn't fully accepted into the group's social structure. Colonel Webb entered the briefing room carrying a thick folder of evaluation reports, his expression revealing nothing about the day's assessment results. He stood before the assembled participants and began his summary with characteristic military directness. "Today's tactical exercises and individual assessments have provided valuable data about each participant's capabilities and potential. Some of you performed exactly as expected based on your backgrounds and credentials. Others exceeded expectations significantly, while a few fell short of anticipated performance levels." Webb opened his folder and began reviewing specific results, though he was careful not to identify individual participants by name. Maya listened as he described performance patterns that clearly corresponded to events she had witnessed throughout the day. Team 3 achieved complete mission success using unconventional tactics that demonstrated superior situational analysis and adaptive problem solving. Their approach bypassed opposition countermeasures that proved effective against teams using conventional infiltration and extraction methods. Maya felt a surge of pride at the acknowledgement, but she also noticed that several participants were looking in her direction with expressions that ranged from curiosity to resentment. Success in competitive environments always came with social costs, and she was beginning to understand that her achievements might make her a target for participants who felt threatened by her unexpected competence. Individual assessment results show significant variation in learning rates and adaptation to unfamiliar challenges, Webb continued. Some participants with extensive tactical backgrounds performed exactly as predicted, while others struggled to adapt their experience to New scenarios. Conversely, several participants with limited tactical experience demonstrated rapid learning and creative problem-solving that exceeded expectations. Webb closed his folder and moved to the wall-mounted display showing the map of the Fort Braxton training area. Tonight's exercise will test individual capabilities under stress, while providing opportunities for leadership and initiative. Each participant will be given a different scenario requiring navigation to a specific objective while overcoming obstacles and challenges along the route. Maya studied the map, noting the varied terrain that included wooded areas, open fields, simulated urban environments, and natural obstacles like streams and rocky outcroppings. The individual scenarios would test self-reliance and decision-making without the support structure of team operations. Scenario assignments and equipment issue begins at 2100 hours, Webb announced. Participants will deploy at 15-minute intervals to prevent mutual interference. Mission duration is estimated at 4 to 6 hours depending on individual performance and problem-solving efficiency. As the briefing concluded and participants began filing out of the room, Maya found herself walking beside David Kim, the search and rescue specialist who had been kind to her during the morning's equipment issue. Kim's quiet competence during the day's evaluations had earned him respect from other participants without generating the same social complications that her success had created. "How are you feeling about the individual scenario?" Kim asked as they walked toward the dormitory. Maya considered the question honestly. The team tactical exercise had allowed her to contribute specialized knowledge while benefiting from her teammates' experience and leadership. Operating alone would require her to demonstrate competence across a broader range of skills while managing the psychological pressure of complete self-reliance. "Nervous but excited," she replied. "The team exercise showed me that my unconventional background can be valuable, but tonight will test whether that value extends beyond specialized situations." Kim nodded with understanding. "The key is playing to your strengths while accepting help when it's available. Most people fail individual scenarios because they try to be perfect at everything instead of focusing on what they do well." The evening meal was served in the base cafeteria, where participants gathered around tables that had naturally segregated based on the day's performance and social dynamics. Maya found herself sitting with Kim, Chen from her morning team, and a few other participants who seemed more interested in professional development than social hierarchy. Morrison approached their table carrying his meal tray, clearly uncertain about whether he would be welcome after the morning's confrontations. Maya gestured toward an empty chair, and he sat down with obvious relief. "Jake, how are you processing today's results?" Sean asked diplomatically. Morrison set down his fork and considered the question carefully. "Honestly, it's been a humbling experience. I came here confident that my SEAL training and combat experience would give me decisive advantages. Today showed me that experience can be a liability if it prevents you from considering new approaches." He looked directly at Maya as he continued. "Your tactical suggestions saved our team's mission, and they worked because you weren't constrained by conventional thinking. That's a valuable lesson for someone who's spent 15 years learning that there's a right way and a wrong way to conduct operations." Maya appreciated Morrison's honesty and the courage it required to acknowledge error in front of peers. She was beginning to understand that the elite tactical assessment program was designed to challenge not just individual capabilities, but also preconceptions about what made someone effective in high-pressure situations. "Jake, your experience was crucial for mission success," Maya replied. "I could identify alternative routes, but you provided the leadership and organization that kept the team focused and efficient. Tactical effectiveness requires both innovation and discipline." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Tommy Richardson, who had been observing their table from across the cafeteria. Richardson approached with the swagger that had characterized his earlier interactions, but Maya detected uncertainty beneath his confident exterior. Mind if I join the discussion? Richardson asked, though he was already pulling out a chair. I've been thinking about today's exercises, and I'm curious about something. He settled into his seat and looked around the table with calculating eyes. How much of Maya's success today was skill versus luck? One successful mission doesn't necessarily indicate consistent capability. The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Maya could feel the tension around the table as her supporters prepared to defend her performance. But she decided to address Richardson's skepticism directly rather than allowing others to fight her battles. Tommy, that's a fair question, Maya said calmly. Today's success could be attributed to luck, just like failure could be attributed to bad circumstances. The individual scenario tonight will provide better data about consistent capability. Richardson leaned back in his chair, clearly expecting a more defensive response. I respect that answer. Most people would get angry or make excuses. You're treating it like a legitimate assessment question. Kim interceded smoothly, redirecting the conversation toward more constructive territory. The reality is that all of us are here because someone believes we have potential that hasn't been fully tested. Today's exercises were just the beginning of that evaluation process. Richardson nodded but continued pressing his point. I'm not questioning Maya's right to be here. I'm questioning whether today's performance represents her actual capability level, or whether it was an anomaly that won't be repeatable under different circumstances. Maya felt the weight of Richardson's challenge and the expectation that she would defend herself against his skepticism. But she also recognized that his question reflected legitimate concerns about consistency and reliability under varying conditions. Tommy, I think you're asking whether I can perform under different types of pressure and in different tactical environments. That's exactly what tonight's individual scenario should determine. If today was luck, it won't be repeatable. If it was skill, then I should be able to demonstrate similar problem-solving and adaptation tonight. Richardson smiled for the first time since Maya had met him, and she realized that his confrontational approach was his way of testing character rather than expressing genuine hostility. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, Richardson said. Confidence without arrogance, and willingness to let performance speak for itself. That's the kind of attitude that succeeds in high-pressure environments. As the evening progressed toward scenario deployment time, Maya felt the mounting pressure of individual performance expectations. The team tactical exercise had allowed her to contribute specialized knowledge while benefiting from collective experience and mutual support. Tonight would test her ability to function independently while managing stress, uncertainty, and physical challenges without external assistance. She spent the remaining time before deployment reviewing her equipment and mentally preparing for scenarios that could test everything from navigation and problem-solving to physical endurance and stress management. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory, reminding her that true strength often emerged from situations that seemed impossible. At 2100 hours, participants began receiving their individual scenario assignments and equipment packages. Maya watched as others deployed into the darkness, each disappearing into the Fort Braxton training area, with different objectives and challenges ahead of them. When her turn came, Colonel Webb handed her a sealed envelope containing her mission parameters along with specialized equipment that included night vision devices, communication gear, and survival supplies. Her assigned scenario would test navigation skills, problem-solving under stress, and adaptation to unexpected complications in a simulated hostile environment. Maya, Webb said quietly as she prepared to deploy. Today's team exercise demonstrated capabilities that many people didn't expect. Tonight's individual scenario will determine whether those capabilities represent consistent skill or situational advantage. Either outcome provides valuable information for assessment purposes. Maya nodded and shouldered her pack, feeling the weight of equipment and expectations as she prepared to enter the darkness beyond the base's illuminated areas. The next few hours would determine not only her continued participation in the elite tactical assessment program, but also her understanding of her own capabilities under extreme stress. As she walked toward the deployment point, Maya could hear the distant sounds of other participants already engaged in their individual scenarios. Radio chatter echoed across the training area, indicating that the night's challenges were already testing people's limits and revealing weaknesses that daylight exercises had concealed. She paused at the edge of the illuminated base area and looked back at the buildings where her fellow participants would be waiting for her return. Some of them were hoping for her success, while others expected her failure. All of them would be evaluating her performance tomorrow, comparing her results against their own achievements and using that data to judge her worthiness for continued participation. Maya checked her equipment one final time and stepped into the darkness, beginning an individual trial that would determine whether her morning's success represented the beginning of consistent excellence or merely a fortunate anomaly in an otherwise predictable pattern of civilian inadequacy. The night ahead would provide answers to questions that daylight exercises had only begun to explore. Maya's individual scenario began in complete darkness 3 kilometers from the main base, with only the green glow of her night vision equipment providing visibility in the dense forest. Her mission parameters were deceptively simple: navigate to a designated checkpoint, retrieve intelligence materials from a simulated crash site, and extract to an alternate location while avoiding detection by roving security patrols. The estimated completion time was 4 hours for experienced operators, but Maya suspected the scenario contained hidden complications designed to test adaptability under pressure. She studied the topographical map one final time before beginning movement, comparing the terrain features with what she could observe through her night vision. The route to the checkpoint required crossing 2 streams, navigating through dense woodland, and traversing an open field where concealment would be minimal. Enemy patrol patterns were marked on her map, but she knew from experience that actual movements would deviate from predicted schedules. Maya set off through the forest with careful, deliberate steps, using her hiking experience to move quietly through terrain that would challenge even experienced soldiers. Her small size allowed her to slip between obstacles that would slow larger individuals, while her familiarity with wilderness navigation helped her maintain direction without relying exclusively on technological aids. The first complication arose 30 minutes into her movement when she encountered an unexpected stream that didn't appear on her map. The water was deeper and faster moving than anticipated, requiring her to search for a safe crossing point, while remaining aware of patrol schedules that were already behind timeline. Maya used her wilderness experience to identify a fallen log that could serve as a bridge, but crossing it would expose her position if enemy forces were operating ahead of schedule. She spent precious minutes observing the area for signs of patrol activity before committing to the crossing. Her decision to proceed proved correct when she reached the opposite bank without detection, but the delay had compressed her timeline for reaching the checkpoint before enemy forces completed their rotation schedule. The second major challenge came when Maya discovered that the designated checkpoint was under active surveillance by opposition personnel who had established an observation post overlooking the crash site. She could see them through her night vision equipment, professional operators using military discipline to maintain watch over the intelligence materials she needed to retrieve. Maya studied the tactical situation from concealment, applying lessons learned from the morning's team exercise about unconventional approaches to seemingly impossible problems. The opposition forces were positioned to observe conventional approach routes, but they had overlooked the possibility of vertical movement through the trees surrounding the crash site. Her rock climbing experience provided the foundation for an approach that military operators might not consider. Maya identified a large pine tree, approximately 50 meters from the crash site, that offered concealment during ascent and a clear view of the target area from its upper branches. The climb would be challenging in full tactical gear, but it offered advantages that ground-level approaches could not match. Maya secured her equipment and began ascending the tree with careful, controlled movements that minimized noise and visible motion. Her small frame and climbing experience allowed her to reach a height of nearly 20 meters, providing an elevated perspective on the entire crash site area. From her position, she could observe the opposition personnel and identify gaps in their surveillance coverage. The intelligence materials were located in a simulated aircraft wreckage, approximately 30 meters from the observation post. Maya could see that the opposition forces were focused on likely approach routes from the forest edge, but they were not monitoring the area directly beneath their position. A careful descent from the tree, followed by low crawling movement, could potentially allow her to reach the wreckage undetected. Maya waited for the opposition patrol schedule to create a brief window of reduced observation before beginning her descent. She moved through the tree canopy with the stealth of someone who understood how sound carried in forest environments, reaching ground level without triggering any apparent response from the surveillance team. The approach to the crash site required covering 30 meters of open ground while remaining below the sight lines of elevated observers. Maya used her grandfather's teachings about patience and deliberate movement, advancing in short bounds whenever ambient noise from wind or distant activity masked the sounds of her approach. She reached the simulated wreckage and quickly located the intelligence materials, a waterproof container hidden within the artificial debris. But as she prepared to withdraw, Maya heard radio chatter indicating that the opposition forces had detected signs of infiltration and were implementing enhanced security protocols. The extraction phase of her mission had suddenly become significantly more dangerous. Opposition personnel were spreading out to search the area on the crash site, using coordinated sweeps designed to locate and capture infiltrators. Maya found herself in exactly the kind of tactical situation that separated competent operators from elite ones, outnumbered, surrounded, and forced to improvise escape routes under extreme pressure. Maya made the decision to remain hidden within the crash site rather than attempting immediate withdrawal. Her experience with wilderness survival had taught her that sometimes the safest place was the one enemy forces had already searched. She concealed herself within the wreckage and waited for the opposition sweep to pass her position. The strategy worked perfectly. Opposition personnel conducted a thorough search of the surrounding area, but gave only cursory attention to the crash site itself, assuming that any infiltrator would have departed immediately after retrieving the intelligence materials. Maya remained hidden until the search pattern moved beyond her position, then began planning her extraction route. The alternate extraction point was located 2 kilometers away across terrain that would normally require careful route planning and methodical movement. But the heightened security posture meant that conventional extraction routes were likely compromised, forcing Maya to consider alternatives that opposition forces might not anticipate. She decided to use the same stream system that had complicated her initial approach, reasoning that opposition forces would expect infiltrators to avoid water obstacles rather than use them for concealment. Maya entered the stream approximately 400 meters downstream from the crash site and began moving toward her extraction point using the watercourse for both navigation and concealment. The stream movement was physically demanding, requiring her to maintain balance on slippery rocks while carrying full equipment loads through knee-deep water. But her hiking experience had prepared her for exactly this type of challenging terrain navigation, and she made steady progress toward the extraction point while remaining undetected by opposition forces. Maya reached the alternate extraction point 45 minutes ahead of schedule, a performance that exceeded expectations for even experienced operators. She had successfully completed every aspect of her mission while adapting to unexpected complications and demonstrating innovative solutions to tactical challenges. Colonel Webb was waiting at the extraction point along with evaluation officers who had been monitoring her progress through various technological means. Maya could see approval in their expressions as she approached, though Webb maintained his characteristic neutral demeanor during the initial debriefing. "Outstanding performance," Webb said simply. "Mission completion in 3 hours and 15 minutes with full objective achievement and 0 detection incidents. Your approach methodology was unconventional, but highly effective." Maya felt a surge of satisfaction at the acknowledgement, but she was also aware that other participants were still engaged in their individual scenarios. She could hear radio chatter and distant activity, indicating that not everyone was experiencing the same level of success with their assigned missions. "Sir, how are the other participants performing?" Maya asked carefully. Webb checked his evaluation tablet. "Results are mixed. Some participants met expectations based on their backgrounds. Others struggled with scenarios that required more adaptability than standard tactical training provides." As they returned to base, Maya saw participants arriving at extraction points. Some looked confident, others frustrated or exhausted. Morrison entered the debriefing area, appearing satisfied but worn out, his gear showing clear signs of physical strain. He nodded at Maya, clearly pleased her individual results validated their earlier team success. Richardson arrived soon after, his usual swagger replaced by a more subdued expression. During the break, he approached Maya with a mix of respect and lingering skepticism. "I heard you finished your scenario in record time," he said. "That backs up this morning's team outcome." Maya acknowledged the compliment, aware that Richardson was still processing her consistent performance. She was learning that success in elite environments often brought complex social dynamics. "How was your scenario?" she asked. "The terrain looked tough on the deployment maps," Richardson grimaced. "Let's just say confidence without adaptability is a liability. I got through it, but not with the efficiency you showed." The formal debriefing took place in the main briefing room. Colonel Webb and his team presented detailed analyses of each participant's performance. "Scenario results show performance hierarchies that don't always align with prior experience," Webb said. "Some exceeded expectations through innovation. Others met standards using conventional methods. A few failed due to rigidity or poor stress management." He activated a wall display showing anonymized performance metrics. Maya saw her results clearly stood out, placing her in the top tier. "Tomorrow's exercises will raise complexity and stress levels. Participants with exceptional individual performance will lead mixed teams in simulations of real-world challenges." Maya felt both pride and pressure. Leadership offered a chance to demonstrate broader skills, but also increased visibility and likely scrutiny. As the debriefing ended, she noticed a shift in how others treated her. Morrison expressed respect. Chen offered congratulations. Even Park showed interest in her methods. Still, some kept their distance, their expressions hinting at disbelief or resentment. David Kim joined her on the walk back to the dorms. His quiet demeanor masked what Maya suspected was quiet pride in his own performance. "This morning you were dismissed. Tonight you're up for leadership," he said. "How are you processing that?" Maya considered. "Honestly, it's disorienting. I expected to struggle. Now I'm facing expectations I'm not sure I can sustain." Kim nodded. "Success brings pressure. People who supported you as an underdog might resent you as a front-runner. Managing team dynamics is as critical as technical skill." Maya appreciated his insight. She had focused on technical competence, but was realizing that long-term success also depended on navigating interpersonal dynamics. That night, the dorm atmosphere was different. Participants gathered in small groups, analyzing performance and sharing lessons. Maya found herself welcomed into discussions that had previously excluded her. Morrison approached her bunk during equipment maintenance, his tone curious rather than skeptical. I heard you used vertical movement through the trees to avoid surveillance. That's not something most would think of, Maya nodded. I've spent time in the wilderness where conventional routes don't work. You learn to see options others miss. That kind of thinking is often discouraged in training, Morrison said. We're taught standard methods which can become blind spots. Sarah Martinez, listening nearby, joined in. Her ranger background gave her an appreciation for unconventional tactics. Maya, I heard you use the stream system for concealment and navigation. Most avoid water, but you turned it into an asset. As more participants joined the conversation, Maya sensed a shift from skepticism to curiosity and professional respect. Still, some remained aloof, occasionally casting glances that revealed ongoing doubt or resentment. Eventually, Richardson approached, his expression torn between competitiveness and newfound respect. Maya, I need to say something, he said. I thought this program was about physical strength and combat experience. You've made me rethink what effectiveness really means in tactical environments. Maya appreciated Richardson's candor while recognizing the courage it required for him to acknowledge error in front of peers. His admission represented a significant evolution from the morning's dismissive skepticism to genuine respect for demonstrated capability. Tommy, I think all of us are learning things about ourselves and about tactical effectiveness that we didn't expect. That's probably the real purpose of this assessment program. Richardson smiled with what appeared to be genuine warmth for the first time since Maya had met him. You're probably right. And if tomorrow's exercises are as challenging as Webb suggested, we're all going to need every advantage we can get. The following morning brought news that would test every lesson Maya had learned about performance under pressure and leadership in hostile environments. Colonel Webb entered the dormitory at precisely 0600 hours, accompanied by evaluation officers whose serious expressions suggested that the day's activities would represent a significant escalation in challenge level. Ladies and gentlemen, today's exercise will simulate operational conditions that test your absolute limits while requiring leadership, teamwork, and decision-making under extreme stress. Based on individual performance evaluations, team leaders have been selected for a scenario that will determine final program rankings. Webb paused and consulted his evaluation tablet before making the announcement that Maya had been anticipating with equal measures of excitement and dread. Maya Chen, you will serve as Alpha Team Leader for today's culminating exercise. Your team will consist of Morrison, Martinez, Richardson, and Park. You will be responsible for mission planning, tactical decision-making, and team coordination. During a complex operation that incorporates all elements tested during previous evaluations, Maya felt every eye in the dormitory focus on her as Webb continued his briefing. Being selected as team leader represented ultimate validation of her capabilities, but it also placed her in a position where failure would be highly visible and potentially devastating to her continued advancement. The mission scenario was revealed to be an urban hostage rescue operation taking place in Fort Braxton's most sophisticated training facility, a multi-building complex designed to simulate hostile territory with active opposition forces, civilian populations, and time-critical objectives. Alpha Team would be required to infiltrate the complex, locate and extract multiple hostages, and evacuate while neutralizing sophisticated enemy countermeasures. Maya accepted the leadership responsibility with outward calm, while internally processing the magnitude of the challenge ahead. She would be commanding 4 highly experienced operators whose individual capabilities exceeded her own in most traditional measures, requiring her to provide value through tactical innovation and strategic thinking rather than superior technical skills. The mission planning phase took place in a secure briefing room where Maya had access to detailed intelligence about the target facility, opposition force capabilities, and resource constraints that would limit their operational options. She studied the available information with intense focus, applying lessons learned from previous exercises while looking for creative approaches that could provide tactical advantages. Morrison, Martinez, Richardson, and Park gathered around the planning table with expressions that mixed professional respect with competitive curiosity. They were prepared to follow her leadership, but they were also evaluating her performance against their own standards for tactical excellence. "Okay, team, let's analyze the situation," Maya began, spreading the intelligence materials across the table. "We have multiple hostages in different locations, sophisticated opposition forces with advanced countermeasures, and time constraints that will limit our ability to use conventional approaches." She pointed to various features on the facility diagram while outlining her initial assessment of the tactical challenge. "The opposition expects us to use standard infiltration routes and conventional rescue tactics. But this facility has the same kind of infrastructure systems that we've exploited successfully in previous exercises. I think our best approach is to use utility networks and service passages that opposition forces won't be monitoring." Martinez leaned forward with interest, her ranger experience helping her recognize the potential advantages of Maya's suggested approach. "Maya, that's sophisticated thinking. Most hostage rescue operations rely on overwhelming force and rapid execution, but this scenario seems designed to test whether we can achieve objectives through superior tactics rather than superior firepower." Richardson nodded approvingly, his competitive instincts apparently satisfied by Maya's demonstration of tactical competence. "I agree with the unconventional approach. My SWAT experience has shown me that the most successful operations are usually the ones that surprise the opposition by doing something they didn't anticipate." Maya felt a surge of confidence as her team members began contributing ideas and expertise to her basic strategic framework. She was learning that effective leadership in elite environments meant leveraging individual strengths while providing direction and coordination that maximized collective capabilities. The infiltration plan that emerged from their collaborative planning incorporated lessons from all of Maya's previous successes while adapting to the unique challenges of the hostage rescue scenario. They would use utility tunnels for initial infiltration, vertical movement through building infrastructure for reconnaissance, and coordinated diversionary tactics to confuse opposition forces during the extraction phase. As Alpha Team prepared for deployment, Maya could see other teams receiving their mission briefings and beginning their own planning processes.